And we are joined by Democratic State Representative Nicole Uhre-Balk, who represents portions of the Rapid City area. What districts are so hard to memorize? Can you give us the exact outlay of the portions of town that you represent here?
Yeah, and thanks again for having me. It's fun to be on. So represent District 32, which is up by the hospital, the Boulevard area. The dinosaur gift shop is in my
You have the
district,
dinosaur.
but I don't have the dinosaur technically.
Oh, okay.
So up along Skyline Drive up in here is technically on my district. And then downtown and North Rapid, Lakota Homes area.
Okay, so one of the main things that we wanted to talk about today, and we've talked about this has been an ongoing conversation in the state, is this new prison. The plans for the original prison, this was south of Sioux Falls, some area, some miles below Sioux Falls, with an $825 million price tag, was scrapped. Since then, lawmakers have been looking at new options, and the most latest development that we have is the group of lawmakers on this task force deciding a new prison have set a $600 million cap, and they're looking at multiple different sites, and these sites include Mitchell, Worthing, Sioux Falls, and Springfield. So far, this process, what do you make of it? What do you make of where lawmakers have ended up?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky spot. It's hard. It turns out, especially even in Mitchell and Worthington, where there's some initial support, it looks like people are coming out in droves and saying they're not wanting it in their backyard. And so it's a tricky spot for everyone, for lawmakers on the committee. And yeah, it's going to be hard to keep that price tag at that spot. And that $600 million is for everything, including the land, including infrastructure for water and sewer and whatnot. So there was a motion to try to have it be just the building, and then on top of that would be the extra cost. But no, the entire thing is at the trying to keep it under that $600 million or less. So it's going to be really tough. And the thing that I'm just the most concerned about is just making sure that there's the space and the infrastructure within the building for rehabilitation. That's so important. And and again, for people who are just tuning into the issue, the current prison is older than the state of South Dakota. It was built in the 1880s, and it's falling apart. It's just so overcrowded. We're at over 800 beds capacity, or like more than 800 people are at the capacity of that building. Rehabilitation can't happen to the extent that it needs to, and it's unsafe for the workers. It's not ADA compliant. There's just so many ADA compliant. There's just so many things that we have to get a new prison, and that's a for sure thing. But yeah, as far as where that new prison's going to go, it'll be interesting.
You use the word tricky, and it is tricky because there's different types of opposition to this. Some people don't like the price tag. Once you get the price tag secured, right now they have this $600 million price tag. It does seem like there are different disputes among the sites. We saw in Mitchell that there was some official support from the city side, but then people came out and said we don't want this here. And since then, some of these city officials, government officials, have kind of backed off and said, okay, well, we've heard from the community, so now we're backing off there. Out of all of these sites, which one do you think is the most realistic? And I can go through the list again. I had to put them down for myself.
Yeah,
here,
no,
especially because these are all East River.
Yeah.
And so I think, if we were talking about this conversation, it would be a lot different if we were talking about Hot Springs, Sturgis, Spearfish. We all know these places, but East River's, it's almost another state.
Yeah.
People who live on this side of the state. I mean, it's ways away.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, yeah, it's just going to be so hard. I wish we could do it at the current site and expand that, but it just seems really impossible to get, again, that rehabilitation space that is so important. And I mean, just renovating the old building just to bring it up to code. That doesn't even cover like adding the extra space and the extra beds that we actually need. Just getting it up to code is $100 million. So that's just really out of the question. Again, could we demolish it? Well, what do you do with the people that are there while doing that?
Admittedly, I asked this before we came on there.
No, you're not the only one.
Well, because the land is there.
Yep.
And, you know, a big portion, I'm sure, of a lot of this money would just be the land itself to build a prison. So you kind of wonder if that would mitigate the price, but then as you mentioned, where would you put everybody? Mm-hmm. And would that be, I mean, I guess that would be a temporary situation, but could we still pull it off among the existing prisons?
And, you know, it's unfortunate, you know, we paid another consultant the same amount it was more than our bill to expand free and reduced school lunches for children. And they again came out and said the Lincoln County spot that we kind of had been proposing all along was still the best place. And so it's really unfortunate that we had to say no to that site. And again, I get not wanting to have it in your own backyard. I know their concern is that it would devalue property, and you know, just concerned about safety and some of those things. This Sioux Falls mayor has come out and said that hasn't seemed to be the case for property values around Springfield or around the area, and that it has been a good neighbor, but and it does provide jobs.
Springfield does seem to be pretty supportive. I'm just curious, but do you like any? Are there any sites that stick out to you and you say that is the best option we have right now, or do they all, in your opinion, at this point, still kind of? You know,
I think if we could do a Mitchell or Worthington, just because again they have more of that space. It's still not great, but it's better than the Springfield or Sioux Falls sites. Because again, just so concerned about rehabilitation, and you know, and I'm excited to see that there's a task force looking at reincarceration and looking to see how we can kind of improve our criminal justice system a little bit and make sure that we're trying to address, you know, making sure that the population that is there needs to be there, and that, you know, and looking at other options as far as like treatment or parole and some different things. So there's definitely some. You know, we need to be doing we need to be looking at the building and how can we ensure that only the people who really need to be there are there, and we can try to invest in other options before getting to that point.
I was going to ask you that. Where do you think the state of rehabilitation is right now in the state of South Dakota?
You know, and I'm definitely not an expert on that or know the ins and outs of that very well, but definitely for Springfield, like they just don't have the space to be doing it to the capacity that they know they should be doing and that they even want to be doing. So it is just a matter of having, you need the classrooms, you need you know, the ability to have staff be able to move inmates in and out of different areas, and so it's just really, really hard. You just have to have that space.
Do you foresee a situation where lawmakers go, we should have just accepted this first $825 million deal, it was ready to go?
You know, I think that would have been the best move. They've been studying it for a long time. I do wish that you know, they could have been a little more, you know, getting out, really reaching out to the public, really squelching those misinformation that was kind of going around about why it needed to be so big and do we even need to do anything, but we really, really do. And so I do wish that we could have been a little more, the legislature and the people in the past could have been a little more aggressive with just really getting the word out as to why this is so important and why, yes, it's nothing no one really wants to do, but it's really, really important. And it should have been done 20 years ago, and if we had done it before, it would have been cheaper. And
I think the reason
we got to do something now.
The reason it's become what it has is because it is a large price tag, especially for a state like South Dakota. Yeah. An $825 million project is absolutely a big project for this state and this state's economy. So I think it definitely does deserve some level of, the word scrutiny, I'm saying it in the sense of really looking into it and making sure it's the right decision. Yeah, no, it's not something you want to go into willy-nilly. And I know the number of beds does seem to be a lot, and part of the price tag is that it's different levels of security, right? So it's not like it's all just maximum security
cells and beds and whatnot. It's all the levels, but because there is some of the maximum security, that's the whole area has to be built to provide that maximum security. And so that is kind of what helps that price tag jump up there a bit. But and the idea is that they would have the flexibility so that they could move people in and out of different levels of security as their needs, permit. So, but yeah, so most of the beds would have been at a level 1 or a level 2, which is more minimum to mid security development. So
I want to switch gears here and talk a little bit about election politics, state election politics. I know the Democrats have not yet announced, the Democratic Party has not yet announced its candidate for governor next year or any front runners. Are there any rumors right now? Can you share anything on that front with us?
I wish I knew, but I don't. I mean, there is the one Democratic candidate, but yeah, theoretically, for governor. There's,
for governor, wow, okay.
The 19-year-old Arnold,
okay.
Last name, Robert Arnold. He has announced, so there's that. But yeah, per the Democratic Party, definitely until after the primary, doesn't necessarily come out and endorse a certain candidate. So theoretically, there's going to be a primary, but we'll see. I haven't heard anything. But get out the popcorn because it's going to be a wild ride.
What do you think is going to be the key to getting a successful candidate this go around?
Yeah, I mean, I hope whoever is in that spot is running for that spot after the primary. I hope they're just really communicative of what are we building towards, not just reactionary to what's going on at the national level or even at the state level, but like how are we trying to make people's lives better, and not be so absorbed in the culture wars and just all the other stuff, but like how are we making education better, how are we making healthcare better, how are we improving the housing situation, like all those things. So what are we building for, and not just being reactionary?
Do you think Democrats right now are too reactionary to everything that's happening instead of, as you say, promoting their own agenda? They're busy reacting to what's going on?
Well, it's hard not to be. There's so much to react to, and things we do need to stand up for our values, and we do need to stand up and say, to say what we're for or what we're against because of the impact that it does have on everyday South Dakotans. So concerning what's going on with Medicaid, just that our rural hospitals will be in dire straits if the cuts are to the level that they are kind of proposing. And so there is a level of that we do have to do, but it's just an and. I was at a speaking event a couple weeks ago and just talked of the power of the word and. We can stand up for our values, and we can talk about what we're going to be doing moving forward in the future.
Stay in those two lanes. So let's talk about some of these concerns that you have then. You're saying that, and I believe you're alluding to the big beautiful bill, that there could be some cuts that would really impact rural hospitals specifically, and that would obviously impact our hospitals here.
Yeah, and we are in, we have a shortage of medical professionals. It's a hard, our rural hospitals are just really in need of care. We're cutting, gynecology units and birthing units are being closed in hospitals, and so yeah, it's we need all the help we can get, and cutting this Medicaid is not going to be the thing that helps.
So and help me understand. So right now there are Medicaid cuts that are proposed in the big beautiful bill that would have an impact on our rural hospitals. This would be through federal funding.
Yes, yep, and just reducing the amount, whether it's looking at Medicaid expansion or all those different things. And to be honest, I don't have all the numbers,
Sure.
And just at every moment,
We don't expect it.
It changes so fast. And so, I stay on, try to keep up with it as much as possible. And at the end of the day, we just don't know what the end result is going to be. And so, kind of waiting for that final outcome.
So far, I am curious, in the first 6 months or few months so far of President Trump's administration, what has been the most concerning impact that you have seen on the state of South Dakota, as far as if we just look at the whole picture here, not just Big Beautiful Bill or Doge or any of those, but specifically I'm curious what you think has been had the biggest impact on South Dakota?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, and it is hard to know exactly what's actually coming and what's still to actually happen and keep track of everything that's actually finalized. I know locally, definitely just the number of nonprofits that have been affected by the cut in different grants and things like that have been a huge concern, and definitely not able to plan ahead, or not, having to cut back on staff, and our nonprofits are such an important part of the system and provide so many services that that the city and the state wouldn't be able to do on their own, and so helping them out, and they can be so responsive and reactionary and stuff is so important. But yeah, I definitely have heard a lot from nonprofits just saying
they're concerned about grant cuts. And were these through Doge? Is that where those cuts were through?
Yeah. Yep.
And what so help me understand. So what exactly have you heard? What are they telling you? That so they're receiving less money, they can't plan for the future, they've had to reduce services. What seems to be? I'm trying to get the level of feedback that you're getting.
Yeah. Definitely had plans for different things, maybe hiring some more staff, or doing some different things, feeling like they need to not. Maybe someone's retiring, they can't refill that position. Some different things like that, having to cut back on just the number of services. Feeding South Dakota, their grant funding was cut back drastically, so they are looking at not being able to either provide as many meals or as many meals to as many people. All those kinds of things are just been really, really huge. Funding to SDPB. We work so hard at the state level to get that funded through the state, and because they provide emergency services. There's so many things that they do that's not just the news, and so it's pretty disheartening and alarming. But we just keep going and try to be listening as much as possible to what people need in South Dakota, and what can we be bringing this coming session to try to fill the gaps. But it's going to be a tight budget year, so we're going to have some hard decisions ahead.
Well, let's move into talking about the budget, right? So yeah, I've heard this. So it's forecast, right, that next budget year is going to be even tighter, I believe, than this year. What do you think the main problem is right now with funding, and how do you think it needs to be addressed?
Yeah, we definitely need just another revenue source. We can't keep cutting and expecting services to stay at the same level, and so we're going to need to look at that. Definitely our unclaimed property one-time funds are going to be way less than they have been before, and so looking forward to having we're having created a bond that will store that money, and then we'll be able to take the interest off of that, but it will take a 3/4 vote from the legislature to take money out of that, which is smart and is good practice. But yeah, that money is going to be considerably less than it has been in the past, and so I think we've been able to do some important projects like funding the prison with that, but yeah, that will continue to be less. So I know people continue to talk about property taxes. I'm hopeful that they did increase a lot in a short amount of time. I'm hopeful that we'll start to, just with how things are going right now, that we'll start to see those start to kind of come down a little bit. And we did expand those who qualify for property tax freezes, so that's good. But
and I know the governor has, he's proposed a county sales tax, so each county would be able to implement its own sales tax. But I'm kind of wondering, when I hear about the state of the budget and the state of the state budget, if we're going to hear next legislative session the TI word, which is actually 2 words, it's tax increase. Is there?
Well,
do you think there's going to be conversations around a sales tax increase? I know it was recently reduced over a few years ago, I believe, right, or a couple years ago, it was reduced slightly. I'm wondering if the conversations will be to restore it or to even raise it from there. How likely do you think that's going to be a conversation?
Well, it's definitely sunsetting that decrease, and so that should be coming up. And we still have some of the lowest sales tax in the nation, and it does help in that our tourism industry does help to kind of cover some of that, and so that is helpful. So I'm definitely in favor of letting the sunset just go through and at least keeping it to where we're at. We'll have to see what the plans are, but yeah, we do have to be able to, if we want services, we need to be able to provide for those services. And people keep saying cut spending, and it's true, and I want to be efficient, and we can do a lot of things, and in fact we can talk about this CSP efficiency summer study session I'm in here in a second, but so we need to do that. But if we keep tightening the belt, at some point we're going to be choking.
Do you think this is an and conversation? We can talk about being more efficient and making sure that we are spending money in a fiscally conservative way, in the sense of that there's no waste, but on top of that we also need to have a conversation about raising revenue, which could be the unfortunate conversation that nobody wants to have about possibly raising or any tax, but the sales tax or other taxes.
Yeah, and I don't really see the sunsetting of this sales tax as, yes, it is an increase, but it's just an increase to what it was, right? And so, in a way, I don't know if that's necessarily could be considered fully raising taxes, but yes, I do think it can be an and I think we can see a lot of improvements upgrading our technology system so that it helps make people more efficient. Not that we're replacing people, but that we're helping their jobs be more efficient and things like that. So I think there's some different things that we can do that would help with efficiencies.
Well, I buried the lead on you. I know you wanted to come in and talk about CSPs. So here we are, I just got in my ear that we're like more than 20 minutes now into this interview. So I apologize. But let's talk about CSPs. Let's talk about CSPs. So you were recently at a meeting, there was like a regional meeting, right, about community service programs and how to make them more efficient. What did you learn during this?
Yeah, no, it's been fantastic to dig into what the department and what CSPs are doing, and I've had several conversations with some great families and parents, and have done several tours, and so it's just been really, really eye-opening. And for those of you who don't know, community support providers, they provide care and long-term care and day services for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and so super important part of our community, and do some really, really amazing work. So looking at some efficiencies, specifically there's two kind of programs. There's the Choices, which is a Medicaid program, and the Family 360. And Choices Medicaid waiver are for those who are staying in the CSPs, like residential care or more, or come for the day services, and so going to those organizations. And then Family 360 is something where families can access some funds to provide care kind of more in-home, and they can kind of pick and choose who provides those services. So, do you think
how efficient were you guys able to, throughout these meetings, how much of an efficiency difference do you think you were able to identify?
Yeah. So, we've only had one meeting, and we are kind of opening up the process to make sure that after we've had all this information from the first meeting, 7 days to decide what are the topics that we really want to focus on, because it is a pretty broad thing, but we're kind of looking at like some certification overlaps between the state and federal certification requirements, and seeing if maybe the frequency or something like that could be looked at. They have what they call external case managers who kind of come in, and but there's also internal case managers, so just trying to see if those roles and responsibilities could be divided maybe a little bit better, and making sure that those two entities that are, and they are required federally, but just making sure that they're doing their best jobs. And then And then also maybe looking at, they do a fee for service. And so, you know, they used to go from 9 different billing codes to 158, I think it was, definitely in the 150s. So tons of billing codes and tons of things that required more administration. And so maybe looking to see if we could try to streamline that process or simplify that, looking at technology, looking at several different things. But the main goal is to have efficiencies, but to make sure that the outcomes for the people involved are of the highest quality, and they provide, they're such an important part of our community, so we want to make sure we're doing our best to take care of them.
Final question: do you think the Democrats, and hard switch here on the subject, do you think Democrats are going to pick up more seats in the state legislature? Or lose seats under the current president, under President
look
Trump's
into my crystal
administration?
ball here and pull it out. I mean, I think it's an amazing opportunity for Democrats to, again, if we can continue to talk about how we are for the common person, and we want to just make the most people's lives as good as possible, and see how some of these different things are going to be affecting, especially South Dakota. I think it will create a spot for an opening. So hopefully, if you're interested in running, make sure you reach out. We'll get you connected. But the end of it doesn't really, we just need more people running. Bottom line, we need more people involved. We need more people following bills, getting involved in campaigns. So whether you want to run or not, just please participate. Democracy is a team sport, and we need all the engagement we can get.